The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has been working on an initiative called Engineering with Nature. It all started in 2010. And this is the EWN Podcast. EWN is developing and implementing nature-based solutions for water and infrastructure projects. It's bringing together a growing international community of scientists, engineers, and researchers from all kinds of disciplines that are committed to harnessing the power of nature to solve problems. The EWN Podcast tells their stories. Now here's your host, Sarah Thorne of Decision Partners.
Welcome to Season 7, Episode 10. For those of you that had the opportunity to listen to Episode 9, you know that we're continuing our very special series of 3 episodes with Katharine Hayhoe, Chief Scientist of the Nature Conservancy. Katharine is a brilliant climate scientist and a passionate advocate for climate action. We're thrilled to have her on the show. Jeff King, lead of the Engineering with Nature program, and I had such a rich conversation with Katharine in our previous episode. We just had to have her back to continue our discussion. We loved how Katharine talked about the head to heart to hand connection, what she's identified as really the critical path for motivating all of us to take action on climate change. She's even written a book about it called Saving Us, a climate scientist's case of hope and healing in a divided world. A key part of her message is that if people recognize and live according to their values, they might just be empowered to make changes that contribute to climate solutions. Well, we pick up the conversation with Katharine, who's a global thinker in global demand, and the challenge of living up to her own climate values.
About 12 years ago, I measured my carbon footprint. And I was shocked and actually, frankly, appalled to find out that the biggest part of my footprint was not my home, not my car. It was my travel, and it was not travel to yoga retreats in Bali. I've never been to one of those. It was scientific travel and travel to talk to people about climate change. So I sat down there and then, and this was well before the program we're using today, Riverside. It was well before Zoom existed. We didn't have Teams. We had Skype back then, and that was pretty much it. And I think we also had WebEx, but that was very expensive. So Skype was the tool we had. And so I decided I was going to, at that time, 12 years ago, way before the pandemic, transition 80% of the talks I gave to virtual talks. And back then, when I said that to people, most people said, we've never done that before. And I said, well, I've decided I don't fly anywhere for a single event anymore. I literally do not. If there's a super important event, like being invited to attend the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony, I will build a bundle around that event, but I will not travel for a single event. So I transitioned successfully over 80% of my talks to virtual, and then the pandemic hit, and I was ready to go. I mean, I have the studio and the mic and the sound panels that double as a cat bed when I'm not using them. So I do go around the world, Jeff. In fact, I go around the world probably 5 times a week, so to speak. But then what I do when I do travel, because I believe that personal connection is so important. Yeah. And the question you asked about how to connect with people and what surprises me and what I see some of it virtually, but I do see much more of it when I spend time with people in person. Yes. So when I do travel, and like next week I'm going to a science festival, so I'm traveling to that science festival, what I do is I bundle. I try to pack as many events into those days that I can. When I went to the climate COP 2 years ago in Egypt, I packed in 55 panels, meetings, talks, and events. 55.
That sounds exhausting.
It is.
Incredible.
I went to Climate Week in New York. I think I got 35 events in 5 days there. So I make every ounce and gram of carbon count when I travel. But when I do travel, like you said, there is so much value in connecting with people. And I would say the biggest lesson I've learned is that we are all humans. And what I mean by that is we might speak a different language, we might dress a different way, we might eat different food, I was going to say we might listen to different music, but increasingly the internet's so global that most of us listen to a lot of the same things. But we all react to climate change the same way. I hear people saying the same things if I'm standing at the back of a conference in Slovakia, if I'm talking to a group of scientists in India, if I'm speaking with colleagues who live in the far north of Canada. All the people I'm talking to, they are worried about climate change. They don't know what to do about it. And they feel like they're doing as much as they can and nobody else is. We all feel like that. So that's why, again, communication is so important. Because if we feel like we're the only hands on the boulder, we will despair. But if we realize there are millions of hands on the boulder in every country around the world, then we realize we're not alone. We can do this. We've got it. And so that global connectivity, I think, is absolutely essential to fixing this problem. And the Museum of the United Nations has this fascinating project where they have these containers with two-way cameras and giant screens that they've set up around the world. And they just get people talking to each other around the world about how climate change is affecting them where they live, the heart, and about what climate solutions look like where they live, the hands, just to show people you're not alone. People around the world care about this. They're engaged on this issue. We're making a difference together. And like I said, we can't do it alone, but I know we can do it together.
Katharine, when you talk about solutions and what people can do, talk a little bit about nature-based solutions. That's a lot of the focus of what we do in the Engineering with Nature program, as you know. We're really interested in hearing what role you see nature-based solutions playing as, part of climate solutions.
Well, first of all, the answer is huge. The IPCC estimates that 25% of our present-day emissions could be eliminated, prevented, or removed by nature-based solutions. So when it comes to climate change, there's no silver bullet in the sense that there's no one solution that will fix it all. And if you see a newspaper headline saying, is this the silver bullet for climate change? I can tell you the answer is no. There is no silver bullet, because our contributions come from so many different sectors and are made in so many different ways that there's just no one thing that could possibly fix it. But I like to say there's a lot of silver buckshot. And nature is one of our biggest pieces of silver buckshot. I mean, 25% of the climate change pie, that is huge. So what does that look like? Well, first of all, I like to think of the atmosphere as a swimming pool. And the level of water in the swimming pool is the level of heat trapping gases in the atmosphere. Back at the beginning, before the Industrial Revolution, we had just the right amount of water in the pool so our toes could just touch the ground. But at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, we stuck this giant hose in the swimming pool, and we've been turning it up every year. During the first year of the pandemic, we turned it down 7%, and then we turned it back up again. So the first thing we have to do is we have to turn off the hose. And a lot of that hose, so to speak, is coming from burning coal and gas and oil. Almost 80% of it comes from burning coal, gas, and oil. The remainder comes from industrial scale agriculture and deforestation. So you can immediately see the connection there to nature-based solutions. Ending deforestation, preserving and conserving land and forests that would otherwise be lost, implementing sustainable agricultural practices that don't produce heat-trapping gas emissions, and also a big part of what we do at the Nature Conservancy is we look at proper siting of renewable energy that will replace the coal, gas, and oil, but without harming ecological or biodiverse rich areas and without interfering with valuable agricultural land. So that's how nature-based solutions can contribute to helping turn off the hose. Our pool, though, has a drain, and the drain primarily consists of nature. We could take up to a third of our carbon emissions potentially, carbon being one of the primary gases contributing to our warming, methane and N2O being two of the others. We could take up to a third of our carbon through making the drain bigger. That means protecting and then restoring and then regenerating. That's restoring the coastal marshes and planting trees, ecosystems, and implementing regenerative agricultural practices that take carbon up and put it in the soil where we want it instead of the atmosphere where we don't. So nature-based solutions are all over the drain. But then there's one more thing. The water in the pool is so high now that some people their toes can't touch the ground. They need to, and we need to help them learn how to swim. We need to build life rafts. We need life jackets. We need to learn how to swim. And there, nature also shines. Nature can help make our cities more adapted, reducing flood risk, protecting coastal areas, reducing the urban heat island effect in our cities, helping figuring out ways to grow more food, not less, in a warmer and more extreme world. So nature is all through these three categories of climate solutions. And in fact, I don't think there's any way for us to meet our Paris targets in any way, shape, or form if we leave nature out of the equation.
Well, that's awesome. Jeff, I would say some pretty strong synergies with the Engineering with Nature focus.
Indeed. Yes. In fact, as Katharine was talking, I was thinking about the wonderful collaborations that we within the Engineering with Nature program have pursued with the Nature Conservancy. And there's so many wonderful TNC projects that are highlighted when we put out the EWN Atlas series. And certainly I think back to Atlas Volume 1 and 2, where we had TNC projects showcased there. But certainly there are those projects, again, that the Nature Conservancy has submitted for Atlas Volume 3 that we're also going to highlight, and really does help people to understand the value of nature and the importance of this work and everything that the Nature Conservancy has provided in this space. But there's other elements of what the Nature Conservancy has done that really does link and align closely with the Engineering with Nature program. And a case in point would be what is happening at Marine Corps Air Station Beaufort in Beaufort, South Carolina. The Nature Conservancy there has come up with resources to be able to create living shorelines. They're at that military installation, working side by side with the Marine Corps, Engineering with Nature, and all of our other partners. And I think, Katharine, for me, that's a true testimony of where the Nature Conservancy finds friends and advocates. I mean, you all are working across all organizational sectors too. And I was hoping that maybe you could talk a little bit about that as well, in terms of the Nature Conservancy's role in this space, your collaborations with federal agencies, non-governmental organizations, the private sector. You're just everywhere, and it's thrilling to see.
Well, I think that's exactly what TNC is known for. And that's part of what I appreciate so much is they're known for being a big tent. And they're known for bringing people together. So TNC Europe is our newest region. We have big teams and programs in Asia Pacific, Latin America, and Africa, and Europe's the newest program. And I was just over there on one of my bundled trips. I have to say I do stock up on lots of water and lots of chocolate to keep going. One of the events that I did with our headquarter team in Berlin was they did a very classic TNC thing. They hosted a breakfast to bring people together. So they brought together government policy experts and ministers, NGOs and foundations, people in the private sector to have a really in-depth conversation about nature-based solutions. And the reaction of the people in the room was phenomenal. Almost everyone said on the way out the door, "How have we never been together with these other people before? We all live here. Why have we never had these conversations before?" And so a huge part of what TNC does is very quiet behind the scenes, just convening people, getting the right people in the room. And then once the right people are in the room, what can we do to help? And of course, as you know, Jeff, a big part of what we can do to help is we bring the science to inform our decision making. And we also bring those strong community partnerships and the desire to make a real difference on the ground today for people's lives, as well as tomorrow for climate. So TNC has been a very proud partner of EWN, I think, since you began in 2010. Isn't that right?
That's right. That's right, Katharine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the number of projects that we've done in partnership with you, I don't know. I think I would need all my hands and all my toes probably to count them.
Well, and Katharine, I remember, this is so true. I mean, there was the Natural Infrastructure Initiative that TNC was there leading along with Caterpillar and the Corps of Engineers and the University of Georgia and Ducks Unlimited. And there was this voice that was being shared up on the Hill in terms of the importance of nature-based solutions and how we needed to think differently in terms of natural infrastructure and creating resilience. And I got to tell you, when you put TNC in a room with, say, an AECOM or a Great Lakes Dredge and Dock, people start scratching their heads saying, what's this all about? But I tell you, it brings so much interest and awareness to this space and showing how very different entities can work collaboratively to accomplish many of the same goals and objectives that we all share.
I love that. And I love the diversity of the projects we've worked on. I mean, you mentioned the living shoreline. I know that we've done fish bypasses on dams. We've done river restoration, coastal wetlands. It's all using nature for the benefit of people and ecosystems today, but then also making those systems more climate resilient, and in some cases even incorporating climate mitigation into our efforts. I just love these multiple win projects, and I feel like almost every project where TNC has collaborated with EWN, you can point out multiple wins.
Multiple wins indeed. Our discussion with Katharine about the critical role nature-based solutions must play in addressing climate change, and the strong, powerful collaborations, like the many project collaborations between the Nature Conservancy and Engineering with Nature and others in the Army Corps of Engineers and many, many other organizations, really does speak to not just what can be done, but what is being done. It's the hope part of Katharine's message. In the final episode, Jeff and I talk with Katharine about how she's inspiring action through multiple channels. We wrap up this special series with Katharine's call to action for our listeners. You don't want to miss it. Season 7, Episode 11 will be out June 26th. In the meantime, to all of you, thank you so much for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. We hope that you'll be inspired to talk about climate change, and we sure hope you'll join us again when we talk about engineering with nature.
You've been listening to the EWN podcast, developed by Sarah Thorne and Jeff King, National Lead, Engineering with Nature Initiative, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Now, for more information, you can visit our website, engineeringwithnature.org. The EWN podcast is produced by iContact Productions for the Engineering with Nature program within the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I'm Dave Trafford.